Moodle Meister.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Moodle Meister, where we look at the different features of the LMS from the teacher's perspective. Today we're going to be looking at the database activity, and we will look at how to set up the database, as well as discuss the different features of setting it up and, briefly talk about what you can do with it. The first thing you want to do is when you get into your Moodle page, as always, is the first step in any situation. Go ahead and go up to the upper right hand corner and turn editing on. Once editing is on, you kind of have the freedom to customize anything you really want. So this will go down to this empty block I have for week 1, and we're going to hit add an activity or resource. Now you have a list of items you can choose from. Today we're going to focus on just this database function. If you click once, it'll give you a little description. If you double click or hit add, then it will get you started. So we're going to go ahead and hit add. Now the first step is that you want to create a name and a description for your database. So for this one, we'll just do test database. And with the description, you typically want to keep it short, but you want to give it something that your students are going to recognize, whether that's just instructions or a description of what it is. So for this, we're just going to go test 1, 2, 3. Of course, if you want to have the description displayed on your course page, you can click this little box here. If you'd rather have it be hidden until they click on the actual database, you can leave that unclicked. I usually like to click it because my students, it just helps them navigate the Moodle page a little bit more. Now if we scroll down, you have all these collapsed menus, and really for grade and rating, unless you have your course set up in this way, you really don't need to worry about these grades. You can set the grade and categorize it, and ratings you can allow people to rate, you rate. So really at this point you don't need to worry about these. Okay, so the 4 areas that you really want to pay attention to are entries availability, restrict access, and activity completion. So let's just go through each one of these. Entries, there are a few areas to set up, and you want to consider basically how you're using this database. So for approval required, this is something where if you hit yes, the students are going to have to get approval from you before they can actually submit something. I don't usually like doing this because usually if I use a database, it's for kids to submit work or stuff that I want them to have the freedom to submit whenever they are ready to submit. For comments, this is one that it depends on how you're using it, but if you mark it as yes, students will have the ability to comment on other students' entries into the database. For entries required, again, it depends on how you're going to use it, but usually a good basic way to set this up is if you mark it as 1, that means that they have to submit at least 1 entry before the activity is considered complete, or it'll mark it on their Moodle page. So we'll just set that to 1. The entries required before viewing, I like setting this at 1 because that means that students will not be able to see other students' entries unless they submit at least 1 item before they can view the others. And then finally, maximum number of entries. It depends on what you want to do with it, but I usually like to set it at 2, which gives the students freedom where if they need to go back and add a second draft of an essay or a second item, they can. But if you're doing something where you want them to submit more than one thing, then you can mark it as high as 50. For availability, this is only necessary to change if you have a specific date that you want this available from, or that they can submit work. So I usually leave it blank because I like to let my students be able to go back if they have late work or something, that they can go back and add stuff to it. So again, it's only necessary if you want to set the dates. Restrict access is a really good tool, especially for having different classes on one Moodle page. If you choose to add a restriction, you can choose by any of these restriction sets, and I usually stick with my group, but you could do it by grade, so they have to have a certain grade in the class before they can access that, a certain date. If you wanted them to maybe complete a prerequisite activity. It's just kind of nice because it helps control the flow. You know, if there's a database that you wanted to set for 2 different classes and you didn't want them necessarily to be able to submit in the wrong one, It just helps kind of create the path for the student. And then finally, activity completion. I like this. It helps my students see what they've done and what they haven't done. I usually take it off, manually mark, and just do complete when conditions are met. And then for this one, it only gives the option, unless you have a grade set up, which I do not, but that they have to at least click on it and view it before it'll check it off. You can also have do not indicate activity completion, but that's entirely up to you. All right, so let's save. Okay, so now you have your database about halfway set up, and I think this is what makes it so confusing in the beginning, is that you feel like you've set it up, and then now you have to go one step further to set up the fields. A field is essentially just going to be areas where students could input different pieces of information. You can have as many fields as you'd like. You want to keep it, don't get it too complicated, but you want to keep it fairly simple and easy to use, but you can also have them enter multiple information. You have all of these items, so checkbox, date, file, lat long, menu, multi-menu, number, picture, radio button, text area, text input, and URL. I'm going to try to go briefly through each, and in another video we'll discuss practical uses for each of these, so I won't get into that too much, but checkbox is simply that you'll have a list of items students can choose from, and they can check as many as they want. So if you were doing films and you wanted to have them indicate what type of film it was, you could have horror, the different genres, and then they could just choose the genre by clicking the checkbox. Dates, it's just them entering a date. File, they can drop a file in. There'll be like an upload area. Lat long's really cool. I've really gotten into this. History teachers will love this. It's where they can put in the latitude and longitude, and it will then link it to you can link it to a Google map, and it will pull up that specific latitude and longitude on that Google map, which I think is really cool. Menu and multi-menu are kind of the same ideas as a checkbox, except for they can choose by clicking on certain items. And then number, math, that's going to be great for you guys. You can input numbers, formulas, answers, things like that. Picture, they can actually find a picture, and it's kind of like putting a file, and they can just add the picture, and you get to set up the size of a picture that will appear. So you can choose the pixels number, and I think it's like 100 or 150 pixels equals roughly an inch. Radio button is just the little circle buttons that you can click on, and again, it's like the checkbox, and you can have different choices, and students can choose those. Text area is where if you wanted them to type in, like let's say you're doing a database of different movies, students can input, they can type in the title of a movie. Text area is only limited to about 60 characters, I believe. So if you're wanting them to write a little bit longer text, then I would go to the text input. So think of this as like short titles, things like that. Think of this as longer passages, paragraphs. And then finally, a URL is just going to be a link to another item. So let's throw a couple of these up here, and then we'll move on to templates. Let's do a text area, and we'll just say name. The field name is what's going to appear next to the area or the button when they go to hit add entry. Field description is kind of just for your notes, where it's just a note of what exactly this field is going to do. And so we're just going to leave that like that, and then you can also, students could embed a file if you would like. From there, just hit add, and then you have this. So we'll come back to this in a moment. Let's add a second. Let's do a URL. Okay, so link, and again, I'm going to leave field description blank. If you hit auto link, it will create an auto hyperlink, so students will be able to click on the link that is inputted, and it will link it directly to the website. So I always like doing that with a URL. I am also a big believer that the fewer clicks a student has to do, the easier it makes it on them. So I always have it open up in a new window. That way they can flip between, they're not getting taken off their Moodle page, and they won't accidentally close out of it. And then force name for a link, I just leave that blank. That's if you do a force name for a link, the URL is not going to hyperlink, it's going to hyperlink to the name. So it could work if you'd like that, but otherwise I just leave it blank, and we'll just hit add. So now we have these two areas. We have the text box and we have the URL. We go to templates, and here you can kind of mess with the way that things look. If you know a little bit of HTML, you can go to this little HTML editor and see the text, but from there you can always reset the template if you don't like how it looks, and we'll hit save, and from there you are ready to go. Now you can always go back and add more fields later if you'd like, but just make sure you hit the reset template button otherwise, and then save, otherwise it's gonna just stay with the last template that you saved it as. And then when you're ready, you can add an entry. So this is the area, and notice that they have lots of information. I can go back and I can change the width of that if I'd like. For the link, this is where they put the URL. They could add a little description if I like, and then they'll hit save and view, or save and add another. And then from there they can view the list, and notice that there are no entries here. I have it set up with my groups so you can see the different classes, and that helps me kind of just stay organized when I'm trying to look at specific classes. And then from there, the rest of the buttons, I don't use them too often. You can search by student, you can export if you have other templates, and that's getting a little complicated. I think for now, just knowing how to use the fields templates and then the add entry and then the view buttons are going to be really all you need to know. So it's kind of a brief tutorial. Additionally, in the description I will place a link to the Moodle page where it gives you some pictures and just a little bit more of a breakdown of each item for the fields, and it'll kind of give you some visual images too if you like that too. So if you feel like you need some pictures, feel free to click on that link down in the description. In the next video, we'll talk about some practical uses that we can use a database for, because it is a very functional tool. So thanks for tuning in to Moodle Meister, and hopefully if you have any questions, please put it in the comments section and I'll try to get back to you. Thanks.